Attention please. This uploading is only for educational purpose. No intention to infringe copyrights. Learning English with Subtitles GPITRAL. Follow us.
The hairy ape man, called Bigfoot, is rumored to lurk in forests across America. Thousands of sightings, zero hard evidence. Some say the creature is a human hybrid. Others believe it's a relic ape. Now, an entirely different theory has emerged.
There's more to the Bigfoot phenomenon than we understand. There seems to be a non-physical aspect to some of these phenomena we're dealing with.
Could Bigfoot's origins be extraterrestrial in nature? Clues in the historical record may point to the possibility. Native American stories record the arrival of the crazy bears, huge hairy mammals who supposedly descended to Earth inside a small moon, which deposited them and then rose back into the sky. By the late 1960s, the outer space origins of Bigfoot was starting to receive serious discussion, spurred in part by an incident in 1966 at Presque Isle, Pennsylvania. That encounter became part of a federal investigation, Project Blue Book, kept under wraps for many years.
Project Blue Book, the official UFO investigation, was taking a serious look during that time of the UFO phenomena. And they did some very, very detailed investigation of some of these cases.
For the Air Force to be involved the way they were, it's obvious they took the whole case very seriously.
Declassified over 40 years ago, the Air Force's UFO investigation, Project Blue Book, now provides insight into the mysterious monster.
Project Blue Book looked into 12,618 UFO incidents, of which 701 remain unexplained, and the Presque Isle case is one of those in the unexplained category. They'd go out, interview witnesses, gather information, then forward all that information on sightings to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was where Project Blue Book was headquartered. They roll out satellites, balloons, lights on aircraft, meteors. They eliminate all the normal possibilities. And then when you get down to it, the data indicates there was something there that they didn't have a good explanation for. What that unknown category is still remains open for a lot of speculation.
A sign for Presque Isle State Park, a man on the shore.
After the initial military response, shrouded with so much secrecy, Gerald LaBelle went back to the beach to investigate for himself.
Months later, I went back to look at the beach and found that the tree involved in the sighting was gone. It wasn't broken, it wasn't laying on the ground, it wasn't rotted out, it was gone. The whole thing was gone, roots and all, the whole tree, broken part in the stump. Maybe the Air Force found things that they didn't want us to know.
Gerald and his friends may never find an explanation for their strange encounter.
Going into that evening, we just thought we was going to have fun. We had no idea what we was going to get into. Betty, she didn't want to talk about it. Doug passed away about 3 years after this happened. And then Anita, she just dropped out of sight. Really, it is something that I ain't going to forget.
A UFO in the sky and a Bigfoot on the ground. Could it have been just a coincidence? A few years after the encounter on Presque Isle, a large hairy beast with alleged UFO origins made another mysterious appearance in the Keystone State. 200 miles south of Presque Isle, the tiny community of Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania, sits in the mountains, surrounded by wilderness. Some believe there are certain geographical areas that provide a gateway for these entities to enter and depart from our physical world.
like other paranormal hotspots around the world. You just get a feeling that there's something here. There's something out of the ordinary.
On February 6, 1974, a resident, Mrs. Ham, was enjoying a peaceful evening. Accustomed to living out in nature, she was prepared to fend off wild creatures. She never expected she would come face to face with something extraterrestrial.
Mrs. Ham lives deep in the woods up in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. And it's around 10 o'clock or so that evening. And she's sitting in her cabin home when she begins to hear some commotion on her porch. So Mrs. Ham figures this pack of wild dogs have come back to the area, so she decides to load one chamber of her 16-gauge shotgun to scare the dogs away.
She creeps out onto the porch with her gun. A dazzling light spins. An ape-like creature materializes in front of her.
There's no dogs there, which she expected, but just a few feet away in front of her, she's startled by this creature with eyes like coals of fire.
Mrs. Ham could not believe her eyes. It was obvious that she was dealing with something that was not from this world. The elusive Bigfoot. In the late 1960s, its sudden appearance in rural Pennsylvania was terrorizing residents. Adding to the mystery, the encounters occurred simultaneously with UFO sightings, leading some to believe that Bigfoot is actually an alien astronaut. Late one July night in 1966, in the remote Pennsylvania woods, a woman identified only as Mrs. Ham heard strange noises coming from her front porch and grabbed her shotgun to investigate.
When Mrs. Ham saw the creature, her first thought was, this thing is going to lunge on me.
She shoots it.
Mrs. Ham fired directly into the creature. There's this bright flash of light, and the creature disappears right in front of her.
She goes inside.
Hearing the shots, her son-in-law ran outside to help.
Her son-in-law, Tom, lived nearby. He grabbed his .22 revolver and began to run towards the house.
The bright light returns. Ape men materialize.
He found himself surrounded by several menacing monsters.
He drops his flashlight, starts firing randomly. He wanted to get evidence and bring one of these things down, but they weren't nowhere to be seen at that point. And at about the same time, he's noticing this strange light hovering over the woods that they described as like a big Christmas ornament with different colors flashing over the area. He just ran, he turned around and ran. Tom had his wife call the police because they wanted to get some help up at the scene. And by the time the police got there, the object had disappeared just a short time before.
Leaving as quickly as they had appeared, the craft and the creatures were gone. Sightings like these have raised questions about Bigfoot's true address, planet Earth, or the stars.
We don't have the answers, and we're hoping that someday more of both the Bigfoot and UFO community will get together and look at this data more thoroughly and open-mindedly and try to find out what's really going on out there.
I don't think they're from this Earth. They have to be from outer space, and they sure are smarter than us, because we've never caught one.
A satellite image of the United States.
60 miles downstream from St. Paul, Minnesota, the Mississippi River widens into a lake, some 40 square miles in size. It's long been a summer destination, and the place where the sport of water skiing was invented. Each year, tourists migrate to the lake for their family-friendly vacations.
Lake Pepin is one of the prettiest spots in North America. Just last year, it was voted the most scenic drive in North America. I always only half-kiddingly tell people there's only two types of people in the world: those that live on Lake Pepin and those that wish they did.
And then there are those that have seen a mega monster suddenly emerge from the lake.
Many people who claim that they want to see it that they actively go out and look for these creatures, when they actually see it, are terrified by their sighting, that it's spooky, it's creepy, that it's not a cute thing to see a sea serpent.
Caption: Lake Pepin monster, a large creature swimming underwater. The lake laps the shore.
In the winter, the cold, dark water in Lake Pepin spreads out like a sheet. On just such a day in 2004, the surface was suddenly breached. The photographer was on a boat some 50 yards away.
What you're seeing in the photograph is more of a humped type creature with the long neck, much like you'd think of the plesiosaur or a Loch Ness monster type. And it seems to show it in the water, nothing else around it, a clear photograph that seems to point to something lurking out there that shouldn't be there.
People ask me all the time, what do I think Pepe is or what is out there?
Larry Nielsen is the captain of a vintage paddle wheel boat working on Lake Pepin.
I don't like to consider myself an expert, but I do know this. I've spent the better part of the last 40, 50 years on the lake. I've seen a lot, seen different creatures on the lake. So I think I probably know as much about Lake Pepin as anybody else.
Recently, he saw something that even he can't explain. Nielsen was in his truck headed to the docks.
I was driving down Highway 61, which runs alongside Lake Pepin. Waves were 6 inches to 12 inches high, and just a very nice, pretty day out on the lake. Saw what I thought was a big log at first glance. It was about 15 or 20 feet long, and about half of it was out of the water. All of a sudden, it occurred to me that that log was floating upstream against the current. Well, logs can't float upstream, so it must be something else.
He'd been hearing about it all his life. Was Larry finally seeing the Lake Pepin monster?
Monsters and Mysteries.